and welcome to the Next Rung podcast. I'm Luis, I'm one of the careers consultants at the university. With me today is Phil, who studied the Masters of Business Administration. What year did you graduate in, Phil?
2021.
Okay, great. And where do you work now?
So I now work for a company called Avala. We're an online sales platform selling household sort of SDA, small domestic appliances, dehumidifiers, air conditioning units, air purifiers, that sort of thing. But we're owned by the Draper Group, which we also own Draper Tools, so a big family business based on the south coast in Southampton. Lots of heritage in the local area. So we're owned by them. And we've been run as a separate independent company, but we've just moved to be part of the group. So we're now actually owned by Draper Tools, and we've been merging and amalgamating into a parent company, which is, for me personally, having worked for much bigger companies, it's straightforward, but for a lot of people that have joined a small sort of agile independent business to then move into a big business has been a sort of culture change, which has taken sort of some good management.
And I imagine as well there must have been, some sort of disruptions to people's working lives in just the process of moving over to being run by a different company. I've been through that myself in a previous role. Was that challenging for you and your colleagues?
Yeah, we actually moved across from the 1st of January, so it's really new.
Right.
I think what the biggest thing is, as I said, being an online trading company, it's very agile, very small, probably a very fun place to work before I came in. We've had to sort of add more process, become a grown-up company. So a lot of them have had to adjust from that point of view. Yeah. Just different ways of working. But I think individually, all the people that moved across will grow from it. And
Brilliant.
Will develop. Yeah. They'll develop skills that they probably wouldn't have had just working for a small independent company that will enable them to have, I think, very good careers because they're going to learn lots of different skills and lots of different ways of working. Yeah,
that's a really good point, because I think a lot of people see sort of unexpected change in their professional lives as sometimes a negative thing, or to bring the unknown, which can be scary. And some people might feel that they might lose their jobs, or they might their job's going to change into something they didn't choose to go into, or whatever. But actually, there's always lots of opportunity. Change brings opportunity as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think when I first joined the company, their workforce, the team was about 20. I think 24, 25. When we actually moved across, we only moved across from 11. So there'd already been lots of change and lots of disruption. The business was struggling for different reasons, and we had to make the team smaller. People left because they were feeling vulnerable, so they took the decision themselves. We had to lose a few deliberately.
Right.
And therefore people were nervous.
Of course,
nervous about their jobs, nervous about change. So it was a case of amalgamating. People have gone into different teams, so they've gone from working again in a very small sort of hierarchy with direct report straight to the GM or to the directors, to going into department heads and being part of a bigger business. So there was definitely lots of nervousness and trepidation, but I think every one of them that has come across has seen the benefits, as you said, and opportunities. Opportunities to work on bigger brands, opportunity to work on different people, learning from different managers, but also working with just different processes in a much more structured way. I think people were nervous because Draper are a family business, very traditional in the way they do things, and there's lots of process because there has to be in big companies. So they have to do things a different way, and it sometimes takes longer to get things done for the right reasons. But they used to be able to make decisions, and we're in a sort of in-between stage where we're still trying to be independent and agile, work within a larger framework. It's been challenging but rewarding, and it will continue, and everyone will benefit from that, I'm sure.
Brilliant, yeah. So tell us about your role at Draper and Avala. What do you do exactly?
So I'm the general manager, sort of head up. I joined as general manager and sort of head off now as part of a bigger organisation. Job titles change and stuff, but the role is leading up the Avala brand and leading up, heading up the end-to-end process for Avala. So when I joined, as I said, we were completely standalone.
Right.
The previous MD had made a couple of interesting business decisions, and we'd lost our largest customer.
Oh wow!
So sort of 85-90% of the turnover was sold through Amazon, and
Right.
for different reasons we weren't trading with Amazon at the time, and therefore literally the whole business stream had changed. They were, did 10 million last year. It was a really good business. They less than three, within the second year they did 10 million turnover, huge and profitable, which is fantastic for a new company.
Yeah.
We're really flying, and then for a couple of different reasons, they, as I said, they weren't trading with Amazon, so they literally had all that turnover disappear.
Wow.
And we had to basically change the way we went to market. So we had to look at new businesses, sell direct on our own website, look at new marketplaces, new customers. So that was the first thing we had to be done. Then look at the way we sort of do our marketing and our messaging, because selling through different channels is different to selling on Amazon. And we had to sort of move away from relying on pure SEO and one way of talking to people and talking in normal retail where you're problem solving and being more expansive. We had to change our headcount and add process, because again they were a sort of new sort of fun startup and lacked a bit of process and lacked a bit of structure. And myself and the two sort of directors that were already there had to very quickly put process in and try and change the way and make cost savings and look at everything from subscriptions that we had, from contracts to say new ways of new customers to sell to, reducing our costs. So we literally had to take everything, strip it down and start again, basically, which was a really interesting challenge. That was what attracted me to the role, opportunity to make a company that's a very sort of young, fun sort of place that people were enjoying working to, but needing to add structure and process to make it a long-term viable business and make it more sustainable. So we basically spent 6 months tearing everything up and starting again to a degree. Keeping what was good, fantastic people. I inherited a really young, energetic team that had brilliant skills when it came to selling on Amazon. Really energetic, really, some people there that really want to have great careers and will have great careers. A couple of directors that helped originally set the business up, but had put everything into that business to get it where it was. Hours, blood, sweat, tears, and money, everything that that wanted it to survive for them, because the people that I inherited were brilliant. And we started to make some fantastic progress. Doing really well, and then we managed to get Amazon back towards the end of last year. And then the group made the decision to take it from a standalone company to be owned by Draper Tools, and for us to integrate into a group way of thinking and into a much bigger company way of thinking, which, as I said at the start, the team weren't used to that. So again, we've been managing that, and things. We actually go fully live back on Amazon Seller with all of our lines today, actually.
Oh, wow.
Which, luckily, the team are really great, and I don't need to be there. They're doing that. All the work was already done, ready to hit the button today. So we will start getting back to where we were, I think, within the next sort of few months.
What are the things for you as the managing director, sort of leading on that process, and quite, a difficult process by the sounds of it, but a really important one. What have you found the biggest challenges in your role throughout that process?
So changing the culture for those individuals has been the sort of probably the biggest individual challenge.
Did you find any resistance?
Yes.
Right.
And there was a couple of people that resisted more than others, which was a shame, because I think one or two that resisted the most were possibly the most talented. But were very suited to an independent agile company. I don't think they would be suited to coming across to the larger business. So changing people's attitudes to working a different way in culture was the biggest individual thing. And adding structure, as I said, because there was so lack of detail, there was so lack of structure. Things were, I think the previous MD was the gatekeeper to a lot of that information. So you're going in, you'd normally expect to have a really detailed P&L, and you'd have a lot of detail that you could then absorb, but a lot of that wasn't there because it went with him. So you're sort of having to rebuild. we were really lucky that because we were owned by the Draper Group, we were able to draw on the HR team for Draper, in particular the finance director, and the ownership being, say, a family business, were really supportive. I think what made it easier was those people around that I'm used to having been part of big companies that I was able to draw on. And anyone that isn't a finance specialist can have an understanding of finance, but to not in the same way a CFO looks at things. To be able to have a CFO that's got your back when you're talking to the board has been massive. So to be able to take the best of both worlds and try and take it forward, I think has been really rewarding.
So in your career, so not just your current role, but in previous places that you've worked, what have you found to be the most useful skills for you, the skills that you've used the most often and that have really helped you, get to where you are in your career?
Yeah, I think I spent most of my life in sales. I don't think anyone, unless your dad's a salesman or you're going into a family business, I don't think anyone ever sits there as a kid thinking, I'm going to be a salesman or I'm going to move into sales. I don't think that's anyone's ambition. Originally, I wanted to join the RAF, and that was always my career path. Unfortunately, I had a knee injury and a bad knee, which meant that I couldn't go the career path that I wanted to. And that wasn't really picked up or became a problem until I was just about to sort of leave college. So I ended up going on a graduate training scheme in a department store, even though I didn't go to university, so I didn't go the normal route. I did my MBA much later in life. And I moved into a sort of retail role, and then ended up in sort of product management and sales. And I think as a salesman, you learn to talk to people at different levels. I think when you're selling into the construction industry, you're selling to people on building sites, but you're also selling to buyers, to selling to MDs. And being able to talk to people on face-to-face and on the phone from a young age of all different descriptions gives you that confidence to be able to take into lots of different situations, for meetings, for presentations, for that sort of thing. And I think I was lucky enough, we were talking about this before the start, I was lucky enough to grow up in and I'm showing my age at 51, but I grew up in a time where we had to make phone calls, and we had to do presentations in front of large groups of people. We didn't have the technology there, so you develop a different sort of way of thinking. And so I think the personal skills and being able to talk to anyone and helps you. I've always liked to negotiate. I've always liked to argue my case and stuff like that. So I think those skills have helped me from a sales point of view and become sales manager, sales director, and work up from that point of view. I think the other thing as well is constantly wanting to evolve, develop and change. I think when I was younger, I did go through a period where I was very happy doing what I was doing. And didn't push myself enough. When I was a salesman, I was working for Makita, fantastic brand, power tools. Stayed there for quite some time. And then when you get older, get married, have children, I think children change that sort of sense of responsibility and thinking, actually, I need to push on. And then I think from that point onwards, I wanted to, every time I changed roles or every time I moved, I wanted to progress, not just from a position point of view or financial point of view, but grow as a person. Looking to take on new challenges. And I think that willingness to constantly push yourself and constantly wanting to take on more and look at different ways and look at different ways of working have definitely helped. I've always been a salesman that didn't just look at my own sales team or just look at my own sales figures. I think lots of salesmen are fantastic at making sure that they're hitting their targets and really focused on their own individual teams. I've always been sort of more interested in the overall result, how my role fits within the other team and the other departments, and that sort of pushed me to want to take on bigger roles and learn more. Going and talk to the ops director, the finance director, the warehouse manager, supply chain, all of those teams, to not only learn from them, but also understand the impact that your role has on them and their role has on you. And I think that was vital. Anyone that wants to progress in a business needs to understand every element of that business. Don't be afraid to go down on the shop floor, working with the warehouse guys, if you're in customer service or if you're in finance, go and understand, because I was managing some very big accounts like Screwfix and B&Q, and you get huge orders that needs to be delivered really quickly. That has a huge impact on supply chain, production.
Yeah.
The other salesmen. Every department had. You've got to be aware of the decisions you're making, the requests you're making, the way you're acting and doing things, what impact that has on every department. And only really when you understand how they also impact you, can you really understand the business. And I think having that curiosity helped me,
Brilliant.
as I said, as a sales director, then look at the bigger picture. And then that really led me to then want to ultimately do my MBA and understand the interest. It's easy for me to say of that of the other sides that I sort of had a grasp of, but wanted to know more.
Brilliant. It's interesting what you're saying about, it's almost like having that empathy or sympathy for other people in different roles and trying to understand things from their perspective so that, the things you do, what impact's that going to have on other people? How's that going to affect them? Is that going to work? That's really important. That communication, I think, is really key, isn't it?
As you said, communication is I think, really the key. And I think it stemmed from, as I said, I've been a salesman, successful salesman in a really good area. Moving international accounts and different areas. And it was only when I then went to the company I was working at when I did my master's, and they have lots of different departments. So they had 3 departments that went out and created the demand for our product. So you had one team that would work with social housing providers, one team that would work with national house builders, commercial, and they would get our product specified. And this company made ventilation equipment, bathroom fans, but big industrial fans as well for restaurants, whole house systems. My job was to lead the sales team that sold into the electrical wholesalers, so we would be the ones facilitating those contracts and dealing with the day-to-day customers that were selling our products. And the decisions those other departments made, really on pricing mostly, had a huge impact on my department and other departments. And the other sales leaders didn't necessarily always consider what impact that has on the other departments. It used to really frustrate me, drive me mad, and I used to constantly try and sort of explain it. And seeing it from being on the receiving side of that, and actually was determined that no decision I made as far as price or anything was going to have a negative impact on other departments. And that's what really led me to want to really get to understand how that all sort of pieced together. And I think, as I said, as you said, that empathy but also being able to see that bigger picture as well, because being able to understand that those decisions might be great individually, but from the greater good of the company and the development of the business is not the right thing to do. So it's having that, being able to be strategic and look at that sort of helicopter view of things.
Brilliant.
I think some people are really good at it, some people are not. And some people have to work harder at it than others. It's one of those things that I've had to work hard at developing and learning. But the more you do it, the more you want to understand it.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing you highlighted a little bit earlier was like the lifelong learning and taking opportunities when they come to you to sort of develop new skills and learn about different things, which I think is so important. Because we also talked earlier about, change may come along. You don't know what's around the corner. Something unexpected may happen in your career, which may open other opportunities. How are you going to be prepared for that? Have you taken opportunities that came along before to develop skills that now suddenly this other thing's come along that you didn't expect? You've done something that's allowed you to take the opportunity because you developed a skill that maybe other people didn't take the opportunity to do. So, as I say, you don't know what's coming around the corner. So it's good to be prepared when unexpected changes happen. And
I agree. And I think e-commerce and internet selling and Amazon and everything else has been really highlighted that. My background was very traditionally trade. So I started my sales career selling into builders merchants, selling into electrical wholesale. And then even selling into B&Q and Screwfix, although they're at the forefront in that sector with their use of their app and everything else, they're still a traditional sales route.
Sure.
And I'd spent most of my time up until after I graduated being in a very traditional role. and then had the opportunity to go and join a startup
Wow.
that were developing a product that we were going to be selling predominantly through internet selling, through
Right.
marketplaces, for our own website and predominantly Amazon. So I had to learn even more about e-commerce and how to sell in those platforms. And again, working with a really good team in the US who are leading up our marketing, that had worked for large companies like Ring Doorbell and for Will I Am. So you're constantly learning from them and learning from our web developers, from our e-commerce sales specialists, embracing all of that. And then when the opportunity came to work for my current business, to be able to then go into a business that is traditionally owned by a trade company, but with a very, very e-commerce marketplace outlook, and being able to bring all of those together. If I hadn't made the change in between, I wouldn't have been able to take this role on. And if I hadn't have embraced actually going to work for a company that was going to be predominantly e-commerce based, again, so constantly. I mean, I'm going in and I'm learning every day from, I look at the people that are running the Amazon account and doing the social media marketing, the SEO, the optimization of all of our products. They're all in their early 20s and understand e-commerce in a way that from sort of the hands-on approach in a way that I never will. But learning from them constantly, able to then help them develop and add the other side of things from my experience to make them more rounded, but not get taken away from their skill set. Every time I speak to them, I learn something.
That's amazing.
Asking, the guy who manages our website, constant questions on our Shopify website and manage our Amazon about optimization. I've been doing Facebook and Instagram ads and placing, doing our placed ads and things like that. And I was 2 or 3 years ago. As my kids would often say, I'm not very good with social media, and I don't use social media in that way. I tend to use Twitter to look at football and that sort of stuff. So actually being able to learn sort of 50 plus how to do social media advertising and that sort of stuff, I think is brilliant. If I can then do it, I think anyone can then embrace change and change direction at any point. And I think it's just that with an attitude of learning from those people around you that know more than you do. And every time we're in a group of people, you should be able to say, well, what can I learn from you? And that was where the MBA here was really good, because everyone was from different backgrounds. So every time we got together, I was learning from the guys that work for Eaton, or there was some people who work for the fire service. And you're just constantly learning from each other because everyone has a different life experience and different way of thinking. So embracing change and constantly learning is key.
So let's talk a bit more about your MBA and the time you spent here at the University of Chichester. How did your course help you with what you've gone on to do since then?
Oh, I mean, hugely, absolutely hugely. I think both personally and professionally helped. As I said, my traditional route wasn't university. So I'd worked for a long time before approaching the MBA. So when I came here, I didn't know how to do referencing or anything else. And, it was a bit of a shock. There was a conversation, actually. I think I put my first sort of practice piece in to Rob Warwick, and he made a joke saying, well, that I had to go at referencing. He said, have a go at it, and then I'll look at it. And he said, there's some sort of attempt at referencing. I'm not sure what it is, but you should let it go. But it was that much of a learning. And I think from a personal point of view, it taught me to be much more reflective. The MBA here was about that sort of full 360 learning of not just looking at a point of view and then proving that point of view, arguing that point of view. Obviously, from a master's point of view, looking at every angle. And that really helped me because whereas say I'd always been traditionally sales or sales and marketing, you look at things in a particular way. And then all of a sudden you're being encouraged to challenge everything you know and look at everything from different angles. And then reflect on it and be really reflective. And that was excellent from a personal and a career development point of view.
Brilliant.
Gave me the confidence to then leave a very established role and join a startup. I don't think having always worked for big brands, if I hadn't done the MBA and had the confidence that I got from the learning, not just from Rob and Paula and all of the fantastic guest speakers, but as I said, the other class, there was people in HR, there was people in service directors, there was a fire chief, there was someone who headed up the registrar's office for Sussex and that sort of stuff. So all of these people with huge different experiences to me gave me the confidence to say, well, actually, I'm going to do something completely out of my comfort zone and join a startup. I wouldn't have been brave enough to do that with wife, kids, mortgage, that sort of stuff. So now I'm going to take the risk, and I know I'm going to learn loads from this that I haven't learned.
Yeah.
So it gave me the confidence, but also gave me the skills of having looked at operational excellence, having looked at supply chain, HR, finance in a way that, again, you don't do just in the side of your job. And what was so good about the course was it was so much work-based. So all of the projects were based around stuff we were doing at work. It wasn't theory-based. It was I tried to take every project and go into a different department of work. So I designed and introduced a mentoring scheme. So I had to work really closely with HR, and that's really helped me in my last 2 roles. Of, again, understanding people more and the HR side of the business and coaching and development. We changed packaging, so we were having to go out and we went out into the field and spoke to end users about our packaging and what they thought about our messaging. I worked on a couple of projects with a new ERP system and redeveloping our website from being very trade-based to thinking about the end users. So all of the departments that I tried to pick a project that worked in a different department each time. So I could then be really engrossed and get to know those people in different departments much more. So by the end of that course, the understanding I had of my business and different business departments was huge.
Brilliant.
How I looked at myself was very different as well, and I think I was probably of a mindset before I did my MBA of when things didn't go well, I suppose you could find excuses and you could look at things that had happened to you, and then I came out with it at the end with an attitude of those things have happened for you rather than to you, and that was a real real mindset change of actually
that's great.
Of doing
I like that.
And because of that, I've then taken every opportunity I can to learn
Brilliant.
and develop more. And I still read, the style of the books from the authors that I was really got to really enjoy during my time. I've then continued to read the other books and the other stuff.
Fantastic.
And again, as I said, that's happening. But as I said, the biggest thing, not all of the learnings have been brilliant, and all of the experiences I got from everyone else was really key. As I said, I wouldn't have had the skill set to have done the jobs. But the biggest fundamental, as I said, is the change of mindset of how of my outlook on things has been the biggest shift.
Sure. So what tips would you give to not only our MBA students, but just students in the wider business school in general? What tips would you recommend, they do whilst they're here at the university and beyond?
So biggest tip I'd say to anyone, especially, is try to do things that you're not comfortable doing. I know that sounds really cliched.
But it's true. It's true.
I don't want to say do things that scare you or make you feel uncomfortable, but just try different things. So if you're not confident doing public speaking, join a debate group or do something that you have to do something that you're not comfortable with. We talked about it. One of the things that I do find with my own kids and with people that I work with that are much younger than me is their ability to talk on the phone and to have a phone conversation and express themselves there, because they're just not used to doing it.
Absolutely.
Learn those skills that employers do want, because when you go out to the workplace, you're going to be surrounded by people that are 10, 20, 30 years older. So I'm 51, I'm 52 this year. I've got my number 2 is in his 40s, but then the next drop down, they're all sort of 20s, and the oldest one of the teams is maybe early 30s.
Wow.
So being able to communicate with people at all different ages is really key. Pushing yourself to do things that are different.
Sure.
And when it comes to learn things that are on a wider scale. So no matter what you want to do, look at things of being able to understand, being self-reflective. Being able to look inwards. One of the things, and I'm not really good at it anymore, and I should. My wife says I should get back to doing it because it definitely helps. I was thinking about it a lot leading up to this, and one of the things I did during my MBA was journal every day.
Oh, amazing.
And that really helped. And I've stopped doing it, and actually, I think some of the frustrations I get with different things would be resolved if I can go back. So one of the things I'll take away from my own preparation for this interview is get back to journaling, because
Brilliant.
again, just being able to look back on things and understand that by doing something, that was the outcome, and could I have done that differently, and could I have changed it, and being able to look back on that and be critical.
Yeah.
But while being self-critical, don't beat yourself up. Because, you know, when I talk to different people, that they worry about what people think of them. You can't help your personality. I get people worry about what people think of them. People worry about if they make a mistake.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, things happen. Most people around you will be supportive.
Yeah.
You learn from it. I think I always say to anyone who's worked for me, if you get something wrong, fine. Learn from that. As long as you not keep doing the same thing. But don't be afraid to get things wrong.
But equally, and the other thing there as well is that, you know, sometimes things don't happen the way you expected them to. You know, you try something, it doesn't work out. That doesn't mean you did something wrong. It just didn't work out the way you expected it to. So, and I always think the people who are most successful, the people who get furthest in their career, no matter what industry it is, are reflective. And, you know, they ask themselves that question, okay, what happened there? What could have happened better? It's not saying what did I do wrong? It's just what could have happened better? And how do I ensure that happens next time? What can I do slightly differently?
Definitely. So the startup I went to work for before my current role we're owned by a much larger company. Loads of backing. The owners backed us really well. We had a team of the people heading up the marketing came from a really huge company, and I think probably may have overspent on marketing. Which and I'll send this link to Chris in LA, so he'll know. Joking aside, it's we try to push. Yeah, I say reach for the stars is an awful phrase, but we're trying to sort of compete with much larger established brands, and we went after trying to compete with them really early on. From our output, our marketing, our creative was fantastic, and the products was great. And I think we went straight after the big boys. Whereas, in hindsight, if the journey had been sort of slightly longer, and spent less on trying to get there as quickly, I think the outcomes of some of the decisions we made would have been better, would have been different.
Yeah.
You know, we got some really good listings. We managed to get a product within 2 years into John Lewis and to Selfridges. So that's a huge leap.
Yeah.
You know, huge achievement for consumer goods, SDA, small domestic appliance product. But there were definitely mistakes made along the way. But those, you know, I think that's always going to happen with a startup.
Of course. Yeah.
And again, you look back and it wasn't necessarily that they were really bad decisions. They were the right decisions, maybe at the wrong time.
Okay, yeah.
And I think, again, being able to look back on that and say, the work that we did was fantastic, but could it have been done at a different pace, or could it have been done in a different order? Just even things like that, you know. And as long as you come away from those experiences, having learned, don't be afraid to take,
of course,
to take risks. And it's really difficult as well, because not many people, when they leave school, college, university, know what they want to do. Even if you know, I think some people go and do a degree that's very specialist, and they know what they want to do. Other people don't. You know, don't be afraid to try different things. Yeah. You know, and try 5 different jobs.
Yeah.
What
Great.
Suits you, because
no
one looks at a CV when you know. If I look at a CV and I'm employing someone, I don't look at their early career and go, well, they jumped around 5 times after university. I'm like, great, they've tried different things.
Yeah.
They've learned different skills.
Exactly.
And they've settled on the path they want.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with trying different things until you find what you're passionate about. Yeah.
And I think that will help anyone enjoy what they do for a job as well. Because if you go into a job straight away and you're not necessarily enjoying it, you go, I don't want to change jobs, or because I don't want 3 or 4 jobs on my CV, or actually I've got a student loan to pay, or even once you get your own mortgage and everything else, and you say, actually I'm going to just stick to doing this because I've got bills to pay. Take a risk.
Yeah.
It can be measured. You know, I've never been a huge risk taker. As I said, I've got to a point where if I don't make these changes before I'm 50, I'll never do it. But if I look back, the one thing I probably should have done when I was younger is try a few different things, or maybe not stay with that first company for 12 years and try different things then. I would definitely recommend people take some calculated risks. Yeah. Definitely.
Great. So we've got some questions from our current business school students. So I'll go through these. So the first question we've got is from a second year business school student. And they ask, did you have a lot of connections that helped you find the role you were looking for? Or was it purely was it something else? What helped you get the role? Was it the grades that you got? Was it your degree? Was it maybe skills you developed? How did you find the role?
Yeah, so the current role I'm in now did come through a connection, actually. So the building industry is quite small, but a lot of people know each other. I was in power tools for a long time, and I reached out to the startup I was in. The owners decided to close the business. They concentrated on their core key business, so we were left with finding a new role. And I reached out to an old contact of mine who's now the CEO of Draper Tools to see if they had anything at Draper.
Yeah.
Thinking going back to a tool background actually, and he said actually we don't, but we have this opportunity to come in and got this standalone business that for one reason or the other is not doing as well as it should. Do you fancy taking that on and adding some process and making them a grown-up company?
Yeah.
And that was from a personal connection, and I think which was great.
Yeah.
I would not have got it. It hadn't been advertised. I don't think I would have, even if I'd seen it advertised, I'm not sure I would have gone into that route. So I was looking to go back to what I knew, and I'm actually glad. We had that, and I think that shows. Make connections.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
When there's two things that sort of say, always be nice to people, and actually remember that you might come across them. And get on with them, even if they're not your favourite person.
You might have to work with them. Yeah.
Like I'm lucky I get on very well with Matt. He's a great guy. But network. Make sure you speak to people whenever you're in a job. If you go to any event, talk to as many people as possible. Make connections. Be interested in them, because that's what helps you with the conversations and stuff. Just be free. I'm lucky enough I can talk to anyone. It's just the nature of my job. But I think I've always been like that. Always talks far too much. But just talk, make connections and network. Definitely. And that will help you. But also the same with recruiters. My other previous roles had all come through. I've been headhunted on several occasions, but from recruiters that I've dealt with, built up rapport with every one of those recruiters I'd had some dialogue with previously. And again, if you're dealing with recruiters, pick a few that you can talk to and have develop a relationship with, and they will always be really key people, because also they know the industry as well. So not just they know people, but they can also give you advice on the industry. They can also
fantastic.
If there's a particular field you want to go into, reach out to companies that do it. Go to networking events. Talk to recruiters that specialise in those industries.
Absolutely.
And just networking on LinkedIn. Just reaching out to people on those companies, and not be afraid to just say, look, I think your company's great. I'd love to work with you.
Absolutely.
And just reach out and get to know as many people as possible.
And following those companies on things like LinkedIn, I've actually heard that some companies will only shortlist applicants that are already following that company on LinkedIn. That's interesting, definitely. And there may be students listening here who sort of are thinking, I don't have any connections, but as you said, you can make them, you can network. Your lecturers will have connections in industry, won't they? So, ask people, because connections build more connections. Those people have their own connections that they may put you in contact with.
Go to careers fairs. Don't be afraid to contact those companies direct, asking, as you said, intern work, or anything that you can do. And just, if they don't, keep in contact, ask those questions. As you said, people know people.
Yeah, exactly.
And having always been a salesman, people buy from people. And that's not just if you're buying a good or service. It's when you're selling yourself. It's so much easier if you've already got a connection, or
exactly.
someone that can introduce you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. This is a good one. What's one piece of advice you wish you'd received when you were studying here?
Oh, wow. That is a really good question. Actually, because I suppose the reason that's probably harder for me is because of the age I did my MBA. It was such a positive experience. I learned from everyone involved. Rob really encouraged me to be braver earlier. Actually, and I probably didn't take that on board as quick as I should. Yeah, and
So it's not what advice do you wish you'd had, what advice do you wish you'd followed?
yeah, he encouraged me to be brave and actually push myself and challenge myself, because I think he saw when I came here, I was sort of not imposter syndrome, but because I hadn't gone this traditional route and I was thought I'd be behind everyone else, I probably didn't have the confidence in my early sort of first few months, and having that person that could see that in you and be really supportive. So if anyone gives you advice that you feel like it's coming from the right place, take it.
Yeah.
I think from an earlier career point of view, before here, I think the one bit of advice I wish someone had pushed me to is to be braver. And
Okay.
as I said, to not really taking risks, but just to be braver.
Yeah.
Embrace change at an earlier age than what I did.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think Rob will be very happy with this one being asked and answered. I'm a second-year student interested in studying a master's. Can you describe your experience studying your master's in 3 words?
Enlightening,
Okay. Yeah.
empowering, hard.
Okay. I mean, that's important to know, isn't it, though? Like, it's not, you need to be prepared for it, don't you?
It is hard. I mean, doing it on top of a full-time job is hard. The dedication of fitting that time in. I was lucky at the time when I first started that I was in a sales role where I stayed away in hotels, covering sort of companies and businesses around the country.
Sure.
So I try and then stay away once a week, and then that evening I'd be studying. But I'd have to also study every Saturday morning or Sunday morning, so you're giving up half a day on top of your full-time job, and then convincing your employer that actually they're giving me 20% of my work week to concentrate on projects, and I'm going to do the rest of my job within the 80% of the time that's left. But it's hard mentally, as I said. It's thinking differently as well, because even if you've done a degree and the masters encourages you, saying, to challenge everything you've already thought of and actually to look at things a different way. Yeah. And changing that mindset is hard.
Wow. Yeah.
So I don't think there's anyone should ever enter do a masters without being prepared that it is hard work. But everything that is rewarding is hard work, I suppose. Yeah, absolutely. But as I said, it was a really, really positive experience from my point of view, and I would encourage anyone to do it that wants to do it, to just to, especially here, as I said, I think it was a really nice environment to do it in. And Rob hasn't paid me for this. But, I can't speak hard enough of Rob.
That's great. Yeah. Next question. Last question. What specific skills were the most transferable from working at the startup company to then going into, the company that you then went into, Avala, that was maybe struggling? What did you find most useful taking from that first experience to that second? That is a really good question, actually, because there's much more in common than you would think. And I suppose the 2 things were resilience. When you're doing a startup, you have to be resilient, because it's hard. It's a slog every day. Trying to get even customers that you've dealt with for years, and you've got great relationships with, to just take a risk. To building processes, to working with, we had nothing in place. We had to find test labs. We had to find partners to test our products, to get registered in the UK, because one of our products was producing a biocide, but with no knowledge of that industry. So it was, being resilient, thick-skinned, because you were getting told no quite a lot. And then going into a company where you've got to try and drive change and things. Again, people are resistant to change, but also it's a slog every day. So being resilient is important, and managing change as well, because when you're setting something up new and you're having to deal with stakeholders that again manage a very traditional trade channel, and the business we were opening was a very different avenue for them. It was a direct-to-consumer business where they were very B2B, and that's the same field I'm in now. We're direct-to-consumer, owned by a B2B traditional company. You're changing people's outlook. So when we were going to our previous owners and saying, we need to do things differently than what we used to. When we were said to sign checks, or we want to drive forward, or we want to do this project and we want to market this way.
the owners necessarily couldn't see
Sure.
that was the route to take, because they were very traditional. So we were having to change their mentalities to look at things differently, to think differently. And then when you come into a business where you need to add processes and need to do things differently, you're having to manage people to change. Being able to take those skills you'd learned here,
Sure.
when we were looking at change models, things like ADCAR and other ways of managing change that you would learn, and chatted to with, as I said, the people from Eton, for example. They were a very matrixed organisation.
Right.
And the guys there were talking me through their change management tools and the models they use, and they all really made sense. And I then said, well, I'm going to take those models and adapt them, and they were really useful across two very, very different scenarios.
Right.
So being able to manage change, not only for yourself but for other people, get people to be on board with driving change, I think is useful in every job that you do.
Yeah.
And as I said, being thick-skinned. If someone says no, not interested, it's not personal. Just go again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not be afraid. Knock on. If you have to knock on 50 doors to have one to open, just do it.
Yeah.
As I said, it does get you down.
Yeah, but actually, you only need one of those doors to open to be successful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, and just keep going. And I think that's, again, in every, that's quite useful. I think in every. And my son's going through his GCSEs at the moment, and I look at it and think, fair play to him. He's addicted to the gym, so he goes. He works out a lot. He plays football. He then goes to runs. He's incredibly fit, but he's studying incredibly hard. And you think, there's times where you look at it and go, well, he's gone. Yes, he's chosen to go to the gym for a couple of hours, but then he'll come back and go, right, I need to do another hour studying.
Wow.
And that work ethic is something that you can't always teach that.
Yeah.
He's definitely got that, and you look at it and think.
Brilliant.
Myself and my wife work hard, and you're hoping that example has rubbed off on him, because he is working incredibly hard and he's not moaning about it, and he's just getting on with it. And you think actually a resilience and a work ethic to just graft in everything you do, I think is important. If you can have that, then I think you'll succeed in anything you want to try and do.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, if you find a real passion in something, then that work ethic will come. So, find what makes you happy, I think.
Without a doubt. I mean, I would say, even if they're doing something that you hate, though, that's not hate, is it? Even if you're doing a particular mundane task in a job that you love, there's times where you're doing stuff that is really boring, and gets you down. But actually being able to just push through that and go through it, because that will lead to other things, or actually other parts of the job that you do find fun will be easier because you push through that a bit.
Brilliant. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Phil. That was really interesting. Really, really great insights and really great tips for our students to take on board. So thanks very much.
I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.